All right, so I'm excited to be here with you all, and we are going to get started. We do have a special guest among us, and he's going to be talking to us in a little bit. So just want to take a moment just to introduce him. And we have with us Mr. Lee Manley Jr. And Mr. Manley was born and bred right here in Washington, D.C., and he's a Vietnam War veteran. So let's put it together for him. Yes, and he's actually an active member of the recovering community since March of 1976, before most of us were born. I should say most of you were born. He's also a member of the International Men's Conference since 2018, where he was invited as a keynote speaker in New York. He currently serves on their advisory board and helped to keep the conference alive. He serves as the chairman of the DC Delegation that hosted the 34th International Men's Conference in 2023. And it's at that conference that actually Jeanette Jackson met him at that conference where we were hosting 451 men coming together who were recovering from various substance use disorders, and brought them all together as far as from London, where they were having this international conference, and he hosted that conference. So we just want to put our hands together for what he does. It's a big deal that you could bring together 451 men, probably 95% of whom were people of color. And so we just want to thank him for that work that he's doing in the community. Prior to his retirement, Mr. Manley worked in the field of substance abuse treatment with a focus on minority families. Currently, he conducts 2 study groups a week, focusing on the role of people of color in recovering community. Let us put our hands together and welcome Mr. Manley, and thank you for his service.
Testing. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lee, and I'm an alcoholic. And I wanted you to know that just in case you weren't quite sure what an alcoholic looks like. And as you hear me talk this afternoon, you'll hear what an alcoholic sounds like. And I've been invited to share with you what has been my experience in the recovering community as well as a recovering lifestyle. As it was mentioned, I've been sober since March the 5th, 1976. Now, I want you to think about that for a minute. And the idea is to give you some sense of what it's like to deal with somebody that has a problem with alcohol that may or may not know it and or understand it. So the goal of this experience is to kind of tell you what happened to me, what happened for me, and what has happened in me to change my life. The first time I can remember drinking of any sort, ladies and gentlemen, I was 15 years old. I didn't drink because I had any problems in my life. I started drinking because of who I was with and the power of the influence that they had on me. Now, most people call that peer pressure. I didn't think and didn't understand it to be peer pressure. What I do remember is that it was something about wanting to be a part of the group that became important to me. And I'd say important because my parents had taught me better. So I knew that drinking wasn't good, not just for me, but wasn't good, period. But on that day, that night, with that group, something in me changed. And somehow or another, the idea that one of the guys in the group suggested to me that the reason that I wasn't enjoying and engaging was because I was a punk. And when he said that to me, something in my gut told my brain to do what they were doing. And I started drinking. Now, not having any idea about what alcoholism is, that started the 15 years of my life drinking anything with anybody, anywhere. So, here's where I want to interrupt this and kind of clarify for those of you that may or may not know the difference between drinking behavior and alcoholism. Y'all eating, so you can't write that down, but I'm gonna say it again. Drinking behavior pretty much leads to under the influence behavior. When you don't drink, you can't blame it on drinking. So what is the obsession and the compulsion to make you go back to this stuff? Ladies and gentlemen, that is called alcoholism. And it's important that you understand the clear distinction between the two. In the nature of your profession, you're more often than not going to find yourselves faced with people that don't know the difference between drinking behavior and alcoholism. A little over 88 years ago, a couple of guys in Akron, Ohio, they recognized that there was something different about them once they started to talk to each other about the consequences of drinking. Again, I want you to follow this carefully because I think it's important to your profession. They found out that there was something uniquely different about talking to each other about the consequences of drinking. And as a result of which, they started a movement that from 1935 until today has helped millions of people learn the difference between drinking behavior and alcoholism. And that's what happened both to me, for me, and in me. Now, mind you, I started drinking at 15. Last drink I had, I was 30 years old, and I've been sober 47 years. So y'all do the math. Giving you a clue of how old I am. Okay. So here is what happened. At the last of my drinking, and I'm saying the last because I really don't know the exact number, the exact period, but what I do know that my life had changed to the point where I'd stopped bathing and changing clothes, and the people in my life, and I can't tell you how important it is, the people in my life look like me, drank like me, talk like me, act like me, live like me. Because of that, it was hard for me to recognize that there was anything wrong with what I was doing because of who I was hanging with was doing the same thing. Now, when I would get in trouble, and I'd get in trouble with the police, get in trouble with the baby mama, get in trouble with the supervisor. But when I would get in trouble, I would go and talk to the people that I drank with, and they would assure me that it wasn't the drinking. And I believed them. I want you to think about who you hang with, who you listen to. And I was hanging with people that drank like me, looked like me, talked like me, and they had the power of influence on me that I couldn't understand because I was in it. Now, towards the end, not bathing, not changing clothes, just a mess. And I had a job, by the way. I wanted to throw that in there. I had a job. Now, the reason I want you to know that, because there's a lot of people that have this condition that have a job. All right? They call it functioning. That's what they call it, which simply means that it ain't got bad yet. It ain't got bad enough yet. But that's all function means. I was able to go to work. The purpose of going to work was to draw a salary. It wasn't to work. I had no ambition, no goals. But I was fortunate enough to have met a lady who knew somebody that got sober. It's important you follow this now. I was fortunate enough to have met a lady who knew somebody that got sober, and she asked him to help me. And he reluctantly agreed, but eventually he introduced me to some people that were sober. And he told me, if you don't drink today, Saturday, and you come and sit with these people, he said that your life will get better. Ladies and gentlemen, I had no idea what he was talking about, but I managed to do it. That day I didn't drink, I sat with them people. I looked around the room. I didn't see anybody I knew. I listened to them talk. I didn't hear anything that made sense, but I have not had a drink from that day to this. Now I want you to follow that carefully. The part I don't want you to miss is who you're hanging with and who you're listening to. So I went from hanging with people that drank and did the kinds of things that drinking will do to you, to have met these people that don't drink. And they don't live like that anymore. Who you're hanging with and who you're listening to. And they started to tell me through their experience how their life had changed. And they said to me in a very warm and inviting way, they said, Lee, and 2 or 3 of them called me by name. They said, Lee, if you want what we got, and we have a better way of life, he said, all you gotta do is just hang with us. Now I ask you to ask yourself this. If you wanna be a nurse, don't you think it would help you to hang with nurses? Just think about that. And that's what happened. It became so simplistic, obvious to me, to hang with people that knew how to live their lives without drinking, helped me understand what alcoholism was, separate the two, and learn how to manage the one. You can't manage drinking. The guy that brought me, that introduced me to these people, told me, son, once you stop drinking, you stop having a drinking problem. Again, if y'all finish eating, you might want to write that down. Once you stop drinking, you stop having a drinking problem. So this is where alcoholism is in terms of mental illness. How do you describe it? In terms of treatment, how do you describe it? Treatment, ladies and gentlemen, by definition, it's a combination of medication when necessary, and then you move from medication if and when necessary, then you move into therapy. That's the interaction of what goes on mentally and emotionally inside of each of us. And then you move from there to education. You want your patients, you want the people you're working with and working for to have some idea of what's going on in them. Most of us don't know how to describe, to identify what goes on in us. We can tell you very clearly what's going on around us. We can describe circumstances. We can describe events, but we're really not that keen on describing the causes and the conditions that makes us think that this, meaning alcohol, is a better way to handle their circumstance. And that's really what alcoholism is all about, not understanding the power of the emotions that we live with. Like right now, I didn't know how do you be a man and be afraid? Men don't own fear. I had never heard the phrase, I'm not embarrassed to tell y'all that, I swear to you, I had never heard the phrase self-centered. I'd never heard anybody say the word ego. I didn't understand self-pity. But listening to these people every day, they kept telling me about sharing their life experience of what they learned, how to manage their alcoholism, not to drink. You remember I told you that about 88 years ago, these guys figured it out? They figured it out that there was nothing they can do about alcohol. People are gonna make it, people are gonna drink it, people are gonna suffer from it, people are gonna die from it. But they could, and they did figure out that there is such a thing called alcoholism, and they figured out how to manage it. And they put together a plan that anybody that's interested could follow what they created and what they developed for themselves. And it's the most amazing thing that I think has happened in my lifetime, the difference between drinking and drinking behavior and alcoholism, a way of understanding what really people are talking about when they say mental illness. Ask yourself, well, how do you define that? Mental, everybody's mental illness. What exactly are you talking about? And how can you help somebody if, in fact, you don't know what goes on in you? You don't know how to manage what goes on through you. And that's the empathetic part of being in this particular profession. And that's what I learned how to do. And I learned it in a combination of ways. One of which is for a short while in 1979, I studied at Rutgers University up in New Jersey. I went up there to learn how to be a professional. I was inspired and motivated by one of my coworkers who told me, well, first let me tell you how that happened. I used to be a pain in the butt at work. All right, seriously, I used to be. But then I got sober and I became an entirely different employee. And by entirely different, I mean, I went to work on time. I went to work as scheduled. I did my job when I got there. I minded my business. And my coworkers saw this change. And so did my supervisor. And he came to me one day and he said, Manley, I've been watching you. And he said, I don't know what you're doing, son. He said, but it's really helping you. He said, I'm really impressed. And he said, I would just want you to know that you have my absolute support. And I said, well, thank you, Mr. Thompson. I appreciate that. He said, now we got a drunk upstairs. We want you to go talk to him. I said, well, wait a minute. Why you want me to go talk to him? Now listen carefully. He said, because you used to be one of them. The transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you right now as living proof that there's a way to manage alcoholism. There's no cure for alcohol, but there's a way to manage alcoholism. So I went upstairs and I talked to the guy. Can't tell you what the outcome was, but I did it. And then I realized I kind of liked the idea. Kind of liked the idea of talking to people about what I was learning about this idea of not drinking. And things in my life continued to change. They didn't always get better, but they changed. So somewhere along the line, there was a job opening, and Mr. Hobson came to me again. He said, Manley, he said, I've been watching you now, and he said, I think this would be a good position for you to apply for. I had no idea, no intention on becoming in management. But the job was the Employee Assistance Program Supervisor for the United States Postal Service. Ladies and gentlemen, I applied for that position. Now, mind you, my studies at Rutgers University was in the summer of 1979. This position became available sometime that summer. I applied for it, I got it, got promoted in March of 1980. And with no managerial experience at all, with just over 4 years of sobriety, I got promoted to be the Employee Assistance Program Supervisor here in Washington, D.C. And I gotta tell you that two things that I would ask that you hold on to. One, be clear you understand the definition of treatment, medication management, therapy, education. Therapy is important. It gives the client and yourself an opportunity to explore not just how they think, but how they feel and how that translates into their behavior. That's really what therapy is all about. It's not to be right. It's always to be helpful. And don't get discouraged or confused if your efforts don't gain immediate results. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes perseverance to make a difference and an impact. I've been told it's called planting the seed, like I'm planting right now. Some of you are getting it now. Some of you won't get it till later. 4 or 5 of y'all won't get it at all. But I've done my part, and that's all you can do is your part. All right, so I just wanted to go over that treatment thing again. Medication management, therapy, and education. Don't be discouraged if your people don't respond immediately. Just make sure that you're giving them your best effort. You're sharing with them what you've learned, what you know, what you've heard, and you want to know where are the resources that he or she can go to if they don't appear to be responding. All right, there are men's groups, there are ladies groups, there are all kinds of different groups that people can go to see for themselves. And that's what happened. I got an opportunity at 30 years old I got an opportunity to see people that look different than the people I drank with. Now, mind you, I drink at work. So I go to this meeting and I see these people that don't drink no more. Then I go back to work and I see the people that are still drinking. Don't drink, still drinking. Don't drink, still drinking. After a couple of weeks, I realized the don't drink people got money. And now I'm an honorary member of the don't drink people got money. And I like that too. I stopped tearing up cars. I stopped getting arrested. I stopped humiliating my family. I stopped doing the things that I was doing under the influence. Under the influence is not the same thing as under the influence. And that's the difference. Make sure you understand, however you can get yourself to recognize it, that alcoholism is a manageable, a treatable condition. There's no cure for it, but you can manage it. I'm managing it today. Knowing I would have this opportunity to be with you all this afternoon, I went to an 8 o'clock meeting this morning. And I was in the presence of 54 people that don't drink anymore, that talk about the issues in life and how they've learned how to manage their hurt, their sadness, their grieving, their joy, their happiness without the drink. It kind of reinforces, reaffirms that now I'm hanging with folk that now they look like me and they talk like me, and the goal and the mission is the same. It's to help one another stay sober and do whatever it is we can by sharing our experience. And the difference is usually when people give you advice, they're suggesting that you do something that they haven't done. Sharing your experience, I'm telling you something that I've lived through. And that's the difference in its credibility. After a while, you start to appreciate a little bit more about what it's like to live through something as opposed to wonder about it, think about it. All right? So, in closing, I think, the timeline, let me see what I can tell you all that I think should and would be helpful to you. Got sober in 76, got promoted in 1980, got married in 1986, have 2 children in my married life. I got one daughter from my drinking life, have 4 grandkids. That postal service job that I told you I got promoted to in 1980, I was able to retire in 1992. My last 12 years as the EAP supervisor of helping folk. Now, most of the people that I think I helped were people with substance issues, alcohol and drugs. And then there were also people that had other issues. And that's what employee assistance means. You want to assist somebody to get the nurturing, get the support that they need to help them become whole again. Whole is when you're functional and you're not overwhelmed by issues or substances. So I retired from the post office, I'm very pleased to say. This part-time job I got in this clinic called Colmac here in Washington, DC. I started working with them in 1984. And I retired from there in 2011, having had what I consider to be a distinguished career, because part of that experience was to work with family members of people that had alcohol and drug problems. And that's another part of your profession that you might want to stay open to about family people. What's it like when the kids and the mom and the parents, and what's it like for them to live with worry and anger and hurt and confusion and that sort of thing. So part of my experience, based on my own and the experience I'd learned from others, was to have some idea about what's available in the community. I'm not trying to have all of the answers. I want to be helpful and know where the answers are. So when you come to me with what I don't know, and I'll be able to refer to you because I've learned from you what you know. And all that you don't know, you know somebody else that does know. All right, that's how you really become helpful. See, ladies and gentlemen, I have learned because of my age and my experience, I know what I know. and I know what I don't know. And I'm a lot better with what I don't know. I have no problem with saying I don't know, but I think I know somebody that does. And I can give you their number, or I can check with them to see about their availability to help you with your situation. So when somebody tells you, and you might want to hear this one, I drink, but I ain't that bad. All right? I'm a binge drinker. All right? These are different ways of people describing alcoholism that they don't yet understand. There's a school of thought, particularly in the professional community, where if there's such a thing as alcoholism, where does it come from? Do you get it from drinking? Again, there's a school of thought that believes that alcoholism comes from drinking alcohol. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if there's any truth to that, then it would seem to me, and hopefully you'll give some thought to it, if alcohol is the problem, then not drinking is the solution. Why do people go back? And that's how you know there's such a thing called alcoholism. Think about it carefully. Let me walk you through it again. I think it's critical to you having a clear understanding of the difference between the two. If alcohol is the problem, not drinking is the solution, why do people go back? And the answer is because they don't yet know and understand what alcoholism is. And that's what I've learned, not only what it is, but how to manage it in a healthy kind of way. It made it possible for me to be here today. It made it possible to me to have met some men who have learned how to bond with one another with similar kinds of issues that don't ordinarily get talked about. What's it like to be a Black man in America? I've experienced trauma from being in Vietnam until I got into a PTSD group and found out that I was traumatized before I went to Vietnam. In the community in which I lived, the circumstances in which I lived under. But in my community at that time, we didn't know what trauma was. Manhood wouldn't let you talk about it or own it. So you learn how to live with it until the circumstance in my life got me at 15 years old to put a drink on it. And once I put the drink on it, then I didn't feel the inadequacy or the anger or the confusion anymore. And that became my solution for anything and everything. Again, trying to understand the difference between the illness and the substance. In 1982 was the implosion in America of crack cocaine. And that just did the same thing that alcohol did. It just did it a lot faster. A lot of the family group, again, people of color, they get angry with those that drink and do drugs. They get frustrated. They don't want to be bothered. They don't have the compassion that professional people can cultivate and develop for yourself. And try to stay mindful of that. You're working with sick people. The behavior might be disgusting, but it's because they're sick. And they don't stop being sick when they start using. They stop being sick when they respond to your care and compassion. Because that's what's been missing in their lives. And that's what the community did for me. They offered me care and compassion. And it's the most amazing thing because it transforms you. It's exciting to me because it's something that I had not done before, did not know it existed, and didn't believe it when they started offering me this care. Come on, man. Come on, we're going to take you and have something to eat. Come on, hang with us while we drink some coffee. Come on over our house and play some cards. And I'm wondering, well, where's the strain? Why they being nice to me? Because that's not the kind of folk that I drank with, not the kind of folk that I hung out with. I'm always thinking that there's an ulterior motive to your kindness. And I've learned that it's different. But my memory is short term. That's why I need the nurturing support every day. And it's available every day. All the pandemic did for me was opened up the recovering community in a way in which I never thought was possible. But now I get to interact with people not only from all over the city, not only from all over Maryland, DC, and Virginia.
You said you wanted to honor us. Well, we honor you because seldom times do we really take a pause to hear from the perspectives of our patients, of our community, and especially of our colleagues, because what actually happened to me prior to me becoming a SAMHSA fellow was I lost my best friend and cousin to a fentanyl overdose. And I too am from this area. And she is the reason why I do what I do, because she was a nurse. And she doesn't or didn't look stereotypically how you think. Like we don't come from a family where, we have many members who are, as we say around, like strung out. So you would never have known that she was battling, like you said, grief, complex trauma. There was all these, symptoms underlying the iceberg, and she was using alcohol and drugs unbeknownst to us to cope. And so I am just so happy that you came here today. You were so brave and so courageous and so loving and caring to share a part of who you are. And you are the reason why we are doing what we're doing. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Questions? Anybody else?
I second all of that. Hi, my name is Laura. I'm also a doctoral fellow here with MFP. And I work with a lot of patients who are in the process of recovering from alcohol use or other substances. And I think a lot of them, something that I struggle with as a clinician is helping them process some of the guilt that they feel about the behavior that harmed the people that they loved while they were actively using. I think, like I have this one patient that sticks out in my mind that he had his baby in his car and he was driving under the influence. Nothing happened. He got in an accident. The baby was safe, but he'll still to this day, he has such pervasive guilt about the fact that he would even go to the extent of putting his baby at risk because of it. And that's a lot of what we worked on. That's just one example of many. And so as somebody who has seemingly, you use humor as a way, like in a way that's very charismatic to share some of your experiences. Like what are some tips that you have for us as clinicians to help our patients move along some of that guilt that comes with recovery, especially when it involves some of the people that you love the most and who may not give you a chance for forgiveness anymore, people that may not be in your life anymore because of your substance history and some of the things that happened, So I don't know, maybe you don't have an answer, but if you do, that would be great.
Repeat the question.
Repeat the question?
Yeah, can you repeat the question? You gotta put the mic
No,
close.
can you repeat the
Repeat
question?
the question.
No,
but
you,
put the mic
your
closer.
question
Me?
about how
Okay.
you got through the guilt.
Oh, the whole thing.
Just the guilt piece.
Just how do you
The mic
help?
to your mouth.
How? Okay. Sorry, guys.
You're loud. No, you need to be loud.
Okay. What tips do you have for us as clinicians to help our patients process and move along some of the guilt that they feel around some of the behaviors and actions that they harmed their loved ones and the people around them in their life when they were actively drinking?
Okay, well, back to the definition of treatment. Medication management when and if necessary, therapy. Therapy is an opportunity to engage a person empathetically. You want him or her an opportunity, create an environment where they feel safe enough to tell you what it is that they're experiencing and give them a chance to talk it through, not solve it, not fix it, just talk it through. That's what therapy is. The conclusion or the answers, you never can tell when and if they'll come, but the experience of feeling safe enough to talk. I don't know there's much thing that we can think of that's better than that, especially the hard stuff. There's a phrase, I'm not sure if a lot of you ever heard it before. The phrase is, I'm gonna take this to my grave. All right? Oh, damn, I forgot to do what she was doing. Sorry about that. The phrase, I'm gonna take this to my grave, implies that there's some things that I've done in my life that are so horrible that I don't wanna talk about it, I don't wanna deal with it, I'm just gonna live with it till I die. Therapy is an opportunity to introduce a different attitude about that. These people that I tell you I meet with every day, they've got a plan of how you address those kinds of what we call emotional baggage. So try, if you can, create an environment where he or she will feel safe enough about being with you to talk about what's going on in them. All right, the lady in the back.
We're just gonna.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Thank you so much for sharing your life experience with us. I find it extremely helpful as a nurse and a licensed marriage and family therapist, which is why I chose to now branch my nursing and this therapist degree is exactly what you're speaking of. And I find it very critical to get to the deeper understanding of what people go through in their mental health issues. And what my question for you is, when I'm working with families, let's just say couples, and one person does have alcoholism, one thing that is challenging is to get the family member or the spouse to commit to some type of support group. Even if it's the non-drinking person, it's hard to get them to see that this is beneficial for them to get into those support groups. And so that first step is so hard for them to take. And I don't know if you have any advice on how we could do that, but I'd really love to hear it if you do.
Well, again, advice is something that you haven't done. Experience is something that you have. You're working with a couple, all right, got the him and the her. The problem drinker could be either one. The idea is to see how open they would be about talking about what's going on. Let us not confuse helping somebody with immediate results. Ladies and gentlemen, we help people based on what we know. That doesn't always turn into immediate results. That's what I meant by planting the seed. So you want to let him or her tell you all of the stuff that's going on, and then you suggest, well, I've got some people that I'd like you to meet. I want you to give that some thought, all right? And when and if you decide to do it, then I'll give you the particular information, or you're prepared to give it to them up front. You want the non-drinking person, the family person, you want them to know that there's a support group for them as well, all right? So you let them know that it's available, and you do it in a way that piques their interest, all right? You don't want to, I don't think you want them to think that they gotta do it, or even that they have to do it. But this is based on what you're telling me. That classic situation. Well, I don't drink all the time, and just, I work, I make my money, I have that kind of thing. Oh, okay, well, it seems that your wife or your husband is concerned about you drinking. You want to talk about that? Again, just get him to talk. Don't fix it, don't solve it, just get him to talk. And what I want from you is to give them the confidence that you're a good person to talk to listen to. All right? That'll keep them coming back to you. And at some point, based on your willingness to be helpful, not right, but to be helpful, you have, I think, a better than average opportunity to turn their attitude towards, well, okay, I'll try that meeting. I ain't that bad yet, but I'll try that meeting. And maybe that'll work for you. All right? Okay, yes.
Hi, my name is Natalie Jules. Hi, my name is Natalie Jules. I'm a MSN fellow. My question that I have for you is dealing with a family member that I have that reached out to me that voiced that they feel like they are an alcoholic and that they need help, but they're just not ready to get help. And they asked for my assistance, but I just didn't know how to help them. What advice would you give to someone that's actively struggling with alcoholism?
Most people that have this condition called alcoholism don't know it. Most people that have this condition, they think the problem is drinking. if they come to you for help, all right, they admitted to you that they have this problem with drinking, then the question is, you want to encourage them to keep talking to you about whatever it is that's going on with them and see how open and willing they are to trust you enough to do what you suggest or recommend based on the city and the community in which you live. I think all of you ought to be able to make a connection to Alcoholics Anonymous. All of you need to know, if you've not been to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, ladies and gentlemen, I would encourage you. It ought to be a critical part of your development to go to an open meeting, to go to a speaker's meeting, to go to an anniversary meeting, so you can see for yourself that AA works. That could be part of your suggestion or recommendation, all right? If he or she is coming to you personally, then some way or another, you've developed a relationship with them that there's a level of trust. So you want them to keep coming, to keep talking, and you provide them the support of being able to be a good listener, be able to make suggestions about things and ways that they can help themselves, but they are coming to you. That says something about you, which is different than their drinking. All right? So keep them coming. Yeah, let's talk about it. And how did you do? Let them describe to you what's going on, and then you ask them, well, okay, what do you think we can do different? Wait a minute. Take your time. Stop right here. All right, let's go through it slow. All right, if you had to do it over again, what would you do? You want to trigger to engage them and to maintain the relationship with you. All right, who's next? I'm on a roll.
Something you said kind of resonated with me in terms of what the trauma that causes the anger, the confusion, but you used the term self-pity.
Yes.
Oftentimes in the clinical world, we might talk about like the shame cycle, but self-pity to me is a little bit different because you may not feel ashamed of drinking. Maybe you feel ashamed of the results of the drinking, right? But it's almost, maybe there's a connection. Like, I guess I'm wondering, was there a point in your journey where you kind of acknowledged that there was self-pity? Because I think that's an important maybe piece of the puzzle for some people, because they're not in a place where they're really ashamed of what they're doing. And they may not recognize that part of the process of why they're drinking is because there is self-pity. So I'm just wondering if maybe with the people you've worked with or your own journey, if there was, what helps in acknowledging that that's part of the puzzle that needs to be kind of addressed.
Well, let me ask you all, for as much as you are familiar with these words, how well do you understand what they mean? When you hear the phrase self-pity, what comes to mind? What is your understanding? What is your interpretation of self-pity? How do you define grief? What's it like for you to feel grief? Not use it in a sentence, but these are the issues that the people that you're working with, this is what they're coming to you with, but they don't know how to describe it. Ladies and gentlemen, I didn't know what self-pity was. I know that I got pissed off when I couldn't have my way. Oh, let me rephrase that. I know that I got pissed off when I can't have my way. Did y'all hear the difference? Because my selfish and self-righteousness has not changed. It's still in me. It threatens the balance of whether or not I enjoy myself today. So what I'm asking in relation to your question or your concern, self-pity has to engage them in conversation. All right, so when somebody is feeling real guilty or feeling real bad, whatever it is, if they're opening up to you, then you've got the inside track. There's one of the best things you can ever hope for is that somebody will open up, appear to be trusting you with trying to sort out for themselves what's happening in their life. I'm not talking gossip. Sometimes it'll come out and fault and blame, but whatever it is, please, ladies and gentlemen, hang on to the idea that they're opening up to you. That was one of the best things that happened for me, is I had to get used to people trusting me. I don't know how to tell you how valuable it is for somebody to trust you. That's not the superficial, that's, let me tell you what's going on in me that keeps me drinking. Now, empathy says that you can relate to the feeling, not to the behavior. And you can share that with them. That's different than giving them advice, but suggestions and recommendations based on what you know. When I was the EAP supervisor, I made it my business to go out in the community and meet the different treatment program providers and the individual practitioners and therapists, so I could have some idea about where I thought the people that I work with, where they would better benefit from, or where would be a best fit. Everybody doesn't need inpatient treatment. So part of your job is to assess and evaluate, what do you think is going to help them? And ladies and gentlemen, there's a very good chance at some point that they're going to do what you suggest based on who you are. That's a whole different way and a whole different responsibility of not being right, but of being helpful. So people would go into treatment programs based on what I said. They didn't know about the program, but they knew me. You see the difference? Yeah. Now they needed the help. The program I suggested that they go to is because I had been there, met the staff, understood how it operated, and thought that would be best for them. Then there was the outpatient program, and then there was the individual program, and then there was the trauma. All right, it's sexual abuse, physical abuse, all kinds of mental health, physical things. And you all have an opportunity to impact their lives in a positive way. Think about how beautiful that is, how rewarding that is, that they are coming to you because they think that you got something. And I think you do. All right, who's next?
Hi. Right over here. Yes, my name is Brianna. I'm from San Francisco, in the lone occupational health nurse practitioner here. So I'm like, finally, someone talks about work. And especially in terms of mental health, that work creates a structure that's really hard to hide from other people when you must be accountable, or people start to notice behaviors, or even just performance, or not just showing up at work. And so oftentimes the workplace is the area in which the people first realize that their substance use is actually having an impact on other people in a way which friends and families may not see, or they may normalize themselves. My question to you is that in your role, for as long as you've been doing, have you seen any like changes over the decades? Something like that's really significant or impactful to you in terms of help-seeking behaviors amongst employees or supervisors, or any like changes in terms of practices?
Off the top of my head, no ma'am. I can't think of any meaningful changes that I've recognized over the years. Now, stay mindful that I've been out of the loop since 2011. All right, that's when I retired. I would keep up with some of the professional stuff for a little while, but I just kind of very gradually have kind of withdrawn and gotten away from it. The basic premise of helping people does not change. Does not change. But just stay mindful, helpful, not controlled. Don't be discouraged or disillusioned that they don't respond immediately. Stay focused on your motive is to be helpful. And ladies and gentlemen, again, if you find yourself that they're coming to you about their issues, that means that you have established a relationship with them that's worthy to keep it going. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Teresa, and I'm a recent graduate of the doctoral program at Vanderbilt. So a lot of the techniques that you are using align very closely to motivational interviewing. And did you receive any extra training in motivational interviewing? And do you recommend I recommend that nurses know more about motivational interviewing and that it be a part of curriculum, because when you're working with substance use disorder treatment and treatment, which you're talking about, the med management, the therapy, the education, I think it's really important. But did you notice or did you have any additional training around motivational interviewing? Because you were excellent and it ties in all with motivational interviewing.
Yes, ma'am, I did. When I was young. Y'all catch that? Let me remind you, when I was young. I ain't been young in a long time. But when I was young, I was very excited about the experience, thinking that I knew what to do. So yes, I took plenty of courses, workshops and things of that nature to keep trying to figure out how to be helpful. One of my mentors told me, he said, son, I'm going to teach you how to help people. Now you gotta understand what I'm going to teach you. I'm going to teach you how to help people. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to agree, that they're going to like it, that they're going to do it. I'm not teaching you about them, I'm teaching you about you. I'm going to give you the skill, all right? And all you got to do is apply it. And that's back to how important it is, ladies and gentlemen, when you recognize that people are coming to you. That's something special. That says something special about you. And take advantage of that opportunity, not to know it all, not to do it all, but just to be open to the fact somebody's burdened and hurt and all of that, but they're coming to you with it. Now, they might not want to get help. They might not want to get well. A lot of the people that are coming to you, they're in trouble and they want to get out of trouble. They want the job, they don't want to lose the job, they don't want to lose the driver's license, they don't want to lose the family. Those are all exteriors, but you got the skill to tilt that. That's what you have. You have the skill and the opportunity to tilt that. So it goes away from what that was. Now, again, back to me. I had the job, I had the car, I had all of that external stuff. I didn't know how bad my life was until I'd been in recovery for a while. I've been in 3 car accidents. The last one was a head-on collision, and this was before airbags. That's how messed up I was. Look, when I got arrested, I don't normally talk about this, but let me tell you, when I got arrested, I didn't call my parents, I called one of my drinking partners. Again, who you're hanging with, who you're listening to. I called her, he can't pick me up with a excuse me. I'm laughing at how messed up my life was. At the time, he said, what happened? What happened? And I told him, and he reached underneath the seat and he pulled out a 10th of J&B. For those of y'all that are not familiar, that's scotch. And I just started drinking and it all went away. No shame, no guilt, no embarrassment. Who you're hanging with, who you're listening to. And that's what you want to say to your clients. When they're explaining to you all of the circumstances of their lives, ask them who you're hanging with and who you're listening to. Now, why do you think this keeps happening to you? And listen to them explain it to you. And you want to keep guiding them until they can start to see for themselves what you know. And that'll help them feel better about being with you. And that's what you want. You want them to come back to you. Not because you have all the answers, but because you are empathetic to understanding. You've created an environment that they enjoy being with you. They don't enjoy being with everybody, but they enjoy being with you. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how much more you could possibly want in your profession. Don't forget now, you're professional people that want to help. And the people that you're working with need help. And you have the wherewithal, you made the commitment through school to learn as much as you can about what it all entails. Just don't lose the human piece of what a privilege it is for somebody to come and tell you how much trouble they're in. Just think about that.
Okay, so we're going to take the last question. In the interest of time, we have to take the last question. And we have someone from the museum who's going to be talking to us a little bit, because the bus is going to be coming back before long. All right, so we'll take the last question.
Two things. One is a comment and one is a question. My name is Jessica McCullough. I'm a doctoral fellow. I'm a psych nurse practitioner, and I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, so very familiar with AA and the originations of it in Akron. One thing about AA, I think when we think about AA, it's like, oh, AA is for alcoholics, and those are the people who should go. But I was introduced to AA, and it was for support for me being the spouse of an alcoholic and have the opportunity to go and become a member in a group and receive that support. So when you think of AA, it's not just for the people who are, what you say, alcoholics or drinkers. It's for, the family or people who are affected too. And it was very helpful. Two, I do substance abuse treatment, and my question comes from the terminology of alcoholic, because when you stand up and you say, hey, my name is such and such, I'm an alcoholic. In the opiate use community and addiction, there was a lot of talk about the terminology. Like, I don't want to be called an addict. I'm a person with an addiction. How do you feel about that? And have you come across that, with you doing presentations or in the community when you have these discussions and say, hey, I am? Or how did you feel when you first called yourself, like, I am an alcoholic? Like, how did it make you feel? It just it will give us great insight, because some people have difficulty with saying, I am, an alcoholic. And I think when we see these patients and we're treating them, so.
Ladies and gentlemen, when I was brought to this meeting, these people I've never seen before, and they kept saying they were alcoholics, I said it because they were saying it. Right? I didn't believe it, didn't understand it. Oh, damn! I'm sorry. Edit that part out, please. Very, very briefly, the people that I hang with, the people that I listen to, we call ourselves drunks. So that's what I thought I was, a drunk. These people said that they were alcoholics. I recognized immediately how different they looked and how different they talked. In an effort to feel like I wanted to belong, I started saying it because that's what they were saying. I started drinking coffee because they drank coffee. I didn't like coffee either. But that's how shallow and insecure I was at that time. There is no requirement anywhere that you have to identify yourself as an alcoholic or a drug addict. That's a personal choice. It's a personal choice. So if you don't like it, then don't say it. If somebody tells you, well, I ain't no alcoholic, then okay, we don't have to make a debate out of that. But let's find out what we can agree on. All right, I'm out of time. Thank y'all.
Yeah, just want to take a moment to just again say thank you so much to Mr. Manley for being here with us today. I learned three things, Mr. Manley. I learned three things. One, the importance of connectivity, connection to development and growing. And I learned that people respond to our care and our compassion. And thirdly, I learned that don't worry if they don't respond immediately. Just keep doing what you're doing. And that's what we will,